Welcome everybody to the second episode of the Beyond Full Throttle podcast. This time I've got a couple of my club brothers from Exiled here. I've got B-Fly, Exiled Rattler, and our guest this time is gonna be Red from Red Menace. Also goes by
Hey.
SB, Boss, whatever you choose to follow him under. What we're going to be talking about is building a culture around a club and the amount of work that goes into that and the things that some things work, some things don't, uh, but definitely not something everybody can pull off. So, one of the things we talked about in our last episode was kind of how social media has interjected itself into GTA club culture uh, and gaming in general, but a lot of people use it to sort of build false narratives. They use it to shape the way you perceive things, and that can be both positive and negative. Red, you've had really gained quite a bit of a following doing that, both with your GTA content and with Red Dead, um, building stories, building characters,
Yeah.
and I think that's one of those things that a lot of people miss is they all have the same perception. They just want to come across as badasses. There's no nuance to it. There's no character building. It's just really kind of generic. Um, so what's one of the things that you choose to try to pursue in building the stories for your club?
Um, so when Red Menace started, we were really influenced by the old school biker culture, just like everybody else. But at the same token, we had a lot of different ethnicities from mostly urban areas. So we were kind of doing a lot of research on old school clubs, like old school black clubs, old school Hispanic clubs, old school any kind of club that just wasn't the traditional. Um, and so that's kind of where we got a lot of our influence from in terms of different clubs to kind of base ours off of. But at the same token, the thing that I noticed about all of these clubs is like they didn't claim huge swaths of territory. They weren't claiming whole states. They weren't claiming you know uh, regions or anything like that. They were just claiming small parts of cities, neighborhoods, things like that. That's what their bottom rockers would be. So um, I did a lot of research of the Los Santos map to see which areas I would want to represent, and kind of found something to stick to in terms of that, and that helped with branding. So with South Los, we just made sure that we said it all the time, even in churches, in different events. We would always be like trying to make sure that South Los was synonymous with Red Menace, and it just kind of stuck. People liked it. In the beginning, there were a lot of people that were like, "Why are you guys banging turf? Like that's not MC." And I was like, "That's all MC is. Like that's all it is. Like we're controlling territories and claiming a territory. So that helps with branding. People put something on their bottom rocker but don't stand for it. And
Not at
most
all.
of the time in the in the MC community, they just have a bottom rocker. Oh, I'm Polito Bay because
Yeah.
I like Polito Bay, but why? You know.
Right, and
So
I think that's something we ran into. I notice that constantly is
mhm.
you check whatever somebody's territory claim is, whatever their bottom rocker is, and then you look on the map and they're nowhere remotely close to it ever.
Yeah,
Right.
hardly ever.
Like
Yeah.
everybody kind of congregates to usually congregates to Los Santos. Our mother chapter, we run a state rocker, but our mother chapter represents Grand Sonora as the desert. And that's we didn't pick Blaine County. We didn't pick
Hmm.
Sandy Shore. It was the
Right.
desert, and more often than not, I try to stick up there. At least, I mean, that's me personally. But the nice thing about that is when I find myself up there, like 75% of the time, I'm the only person north of the Vinewood Hills.
Right.
Everybody else is down in LS or that area doing something. So I agree with you that definitely a lot of people claim all sorts of stuff and never come anywhere close to representing it.
Yeah.
Um, Rattler, Biff. I mean, I'm not a founding member. You guys are. Uh, what kind of formed that decision to pick there?
We just like the location, really.
Yeah,
Like,
it was we were before Exile, we were always in the city most like mainly like most of the time.
yeah.
So when we came up with the name Exile, we were like pretty much just why not a better place than the desert away from everything. But yeah, like the place itself, it's just there's so
I
much
think,
to it.
It
yeah,
is
and
exiled.
for
Yeah,
sure, dude. And like, it
there's so
goes
much to it.
into kind of like the motif and the imagery of
Right,
a
that
patch.
follows
And
with our
yeah,
motif, right?
yeah,
That's kind
and
of where we get most of our culture and theme of our club from.
and like the place where we found as like the clubhouse. It's like we just didn't spend a lot of time there before when we were together, and then when we
Right.
started Exile, we found a place and we're like, oh, this is pretty dope because we could park our bikes in the clubhouse. It was like you had shelter. It was just I don't know, it gave you a
It
little
was
bit of
different.
background you could build on, and like
Right.
that's the thing. Like you kind of build your fucking
It was a new
legends
thing.
with yourself, like playing this game. Like I think that's the whole point. Like if you want to build culture, like you have to have a little bit of, even if it's just joking around, like a little bit of like,
Something to
oh
stick
yeah,
to.
yeah,
Imagination, if nothing else.
yeah, exactly, creativity, like in some way.
I
And
think
yeah,
that's what a lot of clubs miss is
Hmm.
they don't build upon it. They come up with this idea. They'll come up with a club name. They'll come up with a patch, and it.
yeah, and they ditch it 4 months in because it's not working for them,
Well,
like
it's not
right
even
Well,
then and
because
I
it's
there.
not
think
working for them. I kind of touched
They
on this
haven't
on
put
our
enough
last
into it.
episode. Is that
Yeah,
it like they get bored of it, and that
yeah,
goes into the idea
onto
of
something
like
else.
patch creation, and that's another episode I kind of want to get into. We can talk about it a bit here, but that a patch should mean something, and I feel like
I
that
think
doesn't happen a lot. A lot of people they find some image that they think looks cool on a Google search, and they throw a set of rockers around it, and there's no rhyme or reason to why they picked it. It's just something that they think looks neat. So once
Yeah,
they get bored of it or they see something else, they just move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
There's not any semblance behind it. There's not any meaning behind it. So of course, they can discard it really easily. I mean, and
Yeah.
that was another thing, Red. You guys kind of went a unique route with your patch design. Was and I don't know if you want to talk about some of the
Yeah,
influences of
sure.
it. I know where some of it comes from, obviously, but
Yeah.
why'd you kind of try to decide to ditch the traditional three piece?
Well, I had started a club before, Red Menace, and it was okay. We lasted a little while, but we were small, and it had a three piece, and it was just like it blended in with every other patch that I saw. Like that was just the standard. That was everybody's cut, copy and paste. Like you just your name, your centerpiece, your bottom rocker, and there was nothing else to it. And I was like, how am I supposed to get attention if all I can do is this same pattern every time? So when Red Menace came along, like I said, I had been doing my research. I saw a club in Southern California, Chosen Few, and they had a solid one piece, patch. Everything was inside of this circle, and I hadn't seen anything like it before. Of course, there are other clubs out there like that. I wasn't aware of like Galloping Goose or anything like that at that time, so it stood out to me, and I was like, this is gonna stick. So when I had the patch made, I knew exactly what I wanted, exactly where I wanted everything to be, and I I got like a great response from it immediately. As soon as I debuted it, people were all over it. So it was a it was a good choice. It was a risk because at the same time there were people like that's not a patch. That's not what patches look like. And I'm like, well, it is. There's people that rock, solo one piece patches, and
I feel like a lot of people
I
that
just kind
have
of went from there.
those very strong opinions of like, well, that's not how you're supposed to do
Hmm.
this, or that's not. Also, have no idea what the fuck they're talking about.
Right. They
Um,
just want to be Sons of Anarchy.
yeah,
So.
most of this community like that's and again that's another thing I kind of touched on with our last episode was a lot of people use sort of SOA and Jack's
I
Teller
feel
as
like
as a metric, and
I,
they
Mhm.
that's what I mean. I
they
feel
want
like
to
you're
use
gonna
that
end
as
up
an
using it a
example of
lot.
like they use that as their example of outlaw motorcycle club culture. The problem being that it's a terrible example of outlaw motorcycle club culture.
Right.
Um, and, but kind of talking about like you guys definitely you rock the South Side. You developed a lot of your own terminology. Um,
Hmm.
you,
Hmm.
you touched on this a while back because I follow you on Instagram and like that nobody was really using the term South Lows
Right. Right.
until you started doing that regularly, and you get to see those influences come out in the community in other places. Now, whether they give you credit for it or not is something entirely separate.
Right.
And that's something we've kind of run into too. Is our influences was also old school clubs, but it was more that traditional kind of counterculture era stuff where it's it is that
Mm,
old school you know outside of society biker. We're
Yeah.
exiled. That was our that's the club motif, and especially being out in the desert and kind of that old school kind of cowboy vibe to it. Definitely built a lot of the mythos around the club. It definitely built a
Hmm.
lot of our choice of imagery, and as we've expanded, each chapter's kind of built their own culture, which is really
Hmm.
cool because
I,
we're all
that's
unified
awesome.
under the patch, but each one kind of has their own vibe because of where they are. And actually, I didn't even plan this, but I realized that we have representation from each one of our chapters here now.
Hmm.
No, that's tight.
I didn't even think about that. Like, Rattler, what do you think is made you kind of build Bantam Canyon in the way that you did? Because it's markedly different from our San Ann
it's way
chapter
different
that does like
from
the old west kind of
it's
cowboy
it's
vibe to
way
it.
different from like both chapters actually. Like I think being on the west side of the map, it's like we really never touch base. Like no one ever really touched base over there, besides like being like Vespucci. But up the coast, you got like Chumash and of course Bam Canyon. But when we got there, it's like we didn't at first. I really did not know like what to do with it because it's just one long road and then inside the canyon. But then like we had like things like the orange groves and shit like that, and that became like more of a Bantam Canyon side of things. Like we would hang out at the orange groves in Tonga Valley and shit, and that was like really close to our like clubhouse. So that became a solid representation of the chapter. It was like the oranges. So then we moved more down to the coast, like more down like south towards the coast, and then the beach was like the next thing that we could pretty much touch base on as the imagery of the club would be like we later called ourselves the beach bums.
That's
so
tight.
so it's like so I really just wanted to take a step away from like the classic Exiled like Cowboys and Chiefs and stuff like that. And so it's like just a different vibe, especially being on the like just on the beach, like on the West Coast. It's like really not much to it, but the beach, and we had to do as much as that with that as we could.
That's cool.
It's dope that sorry, let me just
No, go ahead.
the culture of it so much depends on what you are local to. You know,
Right.
Hmm.
like you said, you just found things that connect to your area, but then
Hmm.
become images for who you are. You know,
Right.
and then with South Los, we have tons of inside club lingo. I'm sure y'all do too. Things that we say that we understand that not necessarily everybody else understands, but it's all based off of the areas that we play in.
Hmm.
And like you said, especially with Bantam Canyon, nobody goes there. They're just passing through
Right.
between Los Santos and Paleto Bay. But all of that area locally. That's your area.
Hmm. Right.
So it's kind of a very unique area for a club to even be. So if you see somebody pop up there, it's like, yeah, you didn't think of that
Not at
because
all.
we thought of
Yeah.
that. We were here. The only reason that you're thinking of that or have that idea is because you saw it somewhere and you saw it here. Like
Exactly.
that's it's super unique, but that
That was
adds a lot to
definitely a point
culture.
of contention with a group that will remain nameless. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but like that became
Group
a
of
point
women
because
named
that's
Clovers.
that you're right. That is a unique area. It's one of those places where, most times if I say Bantam Canyon or we have a Bantam
No
Canyon
one knows
chapter,
what the hell you're
nobody
Like
knows
talking
where
where?
the
about.
fuck that is.
Yeah.
Like,
Nope.
like because
Don't
it's
know
not
where it is.
it's not one of the stereotypical ones that gets used by everybody. And there's a bunch of those. There's you see Blaine County a lot. You see Paleto Bay
Mm-hmm.
a lot. You see Los Santos and you see like even uh, specific sections of Los Santos. I see a lot of Vinewood clubs. I see a lot of
Yeah.
more recently. I've seen a lot of East LS clubs, um, which is actually
Hmm.
where B-Fly's
Yeah.
chapter is posted up, and has been for quite some time at this point now.
Yeah, they've
And
been at it for
Yeah,
a
but
minute.
like not at all the first over there. Like
no, no,
that's
not
No,
by any
yeah,
means.
most definitely
yeah.
not one of the first over there.
I very vividly remember us having a conversation with Stryker
Yeah,
because they had an East LS rocker
and we were
before
opening
we
up. Yep.
and basically going to them and saying, this is something we want to do. You guys have been here, um, just kind of a heads up, which is
Hmm.
really what
Yeah.
it should be. A lot of people want to talk about the whole territory beef and territory claims and that sort of thing, and well, this is our place, and that's a double edged sword because obviously it's something to help give identity to your club,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
and it's that's sort of what we've been talking about. But by the same token, the map's only so big,
Right.
and it is a game, and you can make that territory claim. You can say this is our turf, but get the fuck off of it. But if I decide to go to a different lobby, hey, look, I'm on your turf. You're not here. Like
Facts.
so, it's sort of one of those things. Like you can't forcibly keep people off of it. Like you can control your interactions with people while you're there, but the rest of the time, like it's not. This isn't real life, and I feel like a lot of people miss that.
Yeah.
Uh, but kind of going actually building off of that. One of those things that I said is a lot of people make, they kind of shape these narratives and they come up with these stories. Now, most people are terrible writers and they don't have a lot of imagination, so it's always the same stories of them, beefing with the Lost and all this other stuff. Uh, and you know, Red, I know you did a lot of um, different videos with the South Los vibe, and it
Mm-hmm.
was this. A lot of them were really cool. I dig them because they kind of have that like early mid '90s like grimy
They're all
VHS
dope.
feel to them.
Thanks.
Yeah, they're all
Yeah.
dope as hell.
Um, I thought it was important to build a story for my club before I even had members. I had started creating content based around or to create lore for the club. Um, like we have members that never existed that we all like when you're in Red Menace, you know about them, and they're things for people in the club to tie their own backstories to, or to just build the imagination. Um, we have like South Los Hermano was never a member. South Los Geronimo, never a member. South Los Shepherd, never a member. But they're all people that we created to, give us some roots into the area that we're from. And it's just really important. It goes back to, the lingo of your club. It goes back to the identity of your club. If you don't have a foundation, or if you're just like starting something, say, me and my friends want to start a South Los Club, and then you're just claiming it. You're just saying that's where you're from, but you don't have any ties to the region. You haven't made anything going on in your area that relates to you other than you just being there. So
I think
I
that's
felt
one
that
of
it was really important.
that's one of those things where a lot of people with the modded content and everything kind of go off the deep end where you can create characters and spawn bikes and come up with all these stories, and you can make your club look a lot bigger than it actually is.
Yeah,
And to me, that almost seems like it's. I mean, it doesn't seem like lying; it is lying. Um,
yeah,
but in the instance that the way that you're using it to sort of build a history to the club, and you don't. I mean, within the culture of the club, you act like they're real people, but
yeah,
they're not. Like, and if somebody approaches you about it, you don't pretend that you don't pretend that the roster to the club is bigger than you are. You
Hmm.
don't,
Hmm.
and try to incorporate that in the sense that it's not flexing, I suppose is the best way to put it. It's not trying to brag about it. It's just it's helping you build a story.
Right.
Um,
And it's really for us or for the club members. You know, you may watch an episode, Live Red, Die Red, and be like, well, I've never seen that guy. But that story is for us. All of our stories are for us.
Same goes here.
We share it with everyone, but we do it because
For us.
it's for our club. Um, and so, like you said, we're not flexing a roster. We're not saying we have all these people. Like a lot of the, like you said, a lot of the modded content is just like a whole bunch of flat imagery with a bunch of people standing around doing nothing really,
Weird shit.
and there's no
Using some
history
song
to it. Like, look
designer
at my
for
club.
mine.
I'm 10 deep right now. We're all smoking cigarettes, and I have a crazy cut on, and there's girls with no bras on around me. Like, what? But why? But why? Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
You're in
there's
a
there's
lobby.
there's
It's just
groups
you.
out there that I know of, and again, I'm not going to drop names on specific clubs,
No free
but
clout.
no, no. It's more or less that I just don't want to deal with the shit of them being like, "Dude, why did you say that about me? Like, that's not true." Like, I don't
They know
want
who
to have
they
that
are.
conversation because fuck those people. But I know like there's plenty of clubs out there that are very good at faking activity, and not in the sense
Hmm.
of like say generating modern content, but in the way that they present on social media like there's more to them than there is. They present that they come out with videos, they post pictures, they do all this stuff, but all of it is very carefully orchestrated. None of it is organic. None of it is, for lack of a better word, real.
Mm.
It's all very pre-planned. It's always very set to be a certain way and put forth this appearance when the reality of the club is that they aren't as imposing as they like to think that, or like to present that they are. Uh,
Imposing, cohesive, or together.
right? Yeah. It's one guy's vision of what it should be and is presented as this big group thing. And like that goes back to what the culture of a club is, what the point of clubs is this idea of brotherhood. That's one of those things that everybody preaches. Very few people seem to understand or be able to practice. Partially because none of them have a concept of what the fuck brotherhood is, and also
Right.
because most of the clubs don't last long enough to build any sort of bond between people.
It's
Because
true.
it isn't like I've known you and Berg both for years at this point,
Right.
and like so I know there's more to that relationship than just he's this other guy in the club or he's somebody I share a patch with. It becomes
Hmm.
something more than that. You know, I'm coming up on being a patch in Exiled for 4 years. The club itself is going to celebrate our fifth anniversary this summer, and these guys they're not just somebody that shows up on my friends list. We are friends outside
Actual
of the
friends.
yeah.
Yep.
Like I mean, we occasionally hate each other. I mean, can't Rattlers
Yeah.
Yeah.
talk shit to me
Despise this
constantly.
man.
Like that's a lot of back. That's
Disgusted.
a lot of back and forth. Like we harass each other. Um,
Ridiculous.
but
But the patch is behind it and keeps y'all
yeah,
together.
that's part of it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely part of it. I mean, like me and B-Fly have actually gone to I've gone out to dinner and been able to sit next to him and have food with him.
Oh
Like,
man.
don't fucking say it like that. You were like
He's
I could sit down and have a fucking beer with him,
Yeah,
and we
there you
could
go.
bullshit.
That's what you should have led with.
y'all went to dinner.
But like we could sit down and have a beer together, and we could bullshit. And even though that was like our first instance of physically meeting each other, we've still known each other for years at that point. So it wasn't a
Exactly.
very like awkward conversation. You can it's like we're sitting here right now and having a conversation. Uh, and that's one of those things where it makes it less weird, I suppose. And a lot of people think that well, it's you're just those are just your video game friends. Like a lot of people dismiss it, and I don't think that. that also goes into the culture of a club, is how people interact with each other. And if you build that just on how what your last lobby war or TDM was in a game, there's no substance to it.
Hmm.
Uh, there's no
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing to ground that, because as soon as the fight's over, then what the fuck do you talk about? Why are you together? Why are you in a group that's
Right.
trying to present something? And that goes into like that can go into like the recruiting thing, that can go into why you bring people into your club.
Well,
If you have these people that they recruit shooters because they're at war, well, now you have a guy in your club that's a patch that may or may not fit whatever values you have set
and he's
forth
an
for your
asshole.
club. But and that skill set, eventually the fighting stops, and now that skill set's not useful anymore. What kind of person do you have fucking sitting next to you? And
I
it
mean,
might not be something you want to associate yourself with.
it makes me think of um, giant corporations and mom and pop companies, right? Like if you're a mom and pop company, losing an employee is potentially one of your family members or friends, and it's gonna hurt, right? But if you're a giant corporation, you're just hiring people to get the job done. And that's what
Yeah.
these giant clubs that just, you know, have all these shooters. They have a whole bunch of people that can get the job done, but when there's no job to do, they implode because they start shooting each other. Like it you need your club to be a mom and pop show. You need your club to be family and brotherhood and making sure that, like just like you said, you guys can have a beer together and hang out. I could meet up with if we were close enough, I could meet up with any of my members. It would be nothing,
Yeah,
you know? And in other situations in other clubs, it's like, no, I would never want to meet that guy. Like he loots people, he hacks people, like he talks the most craziest shit on Instagram. Like I don't actually want to meet that guy.
there's some pretty
You know,
scuzzy people in this
I'd be
community.
embarrassed to
Mm-hmm.
hang out with that person in
Right.
real life, but you don't want people in your club that you would be embarrassed to
Embarrassed to
hang
be
out
like, why
with, to
would you? Yeah.
see in person.
Yeah,
So,
I'm kind of embarrassed by Hot Shoe, but I still associate him.
Hot shoe. I was just thinking about. I ain't want to say his name, but I was
oh
just thinking about
man,
hot shoe, bro. Nah, he's
uh,
alright.
Hot Shoe Exiled Deadhead is a childhood friend of mine. I've known him for 25 years now.
oh, okay.
Yeah, we grew up
he
two
is a
blocks. We grew up two
fantastic
blocks.
addition to this club.
He is
Yeah.
definitely a character, and I love him dearly. But
You guys have all
he
types of characters.
he's
We've
also
got
like what
a lot of
arguably
them.
like one of the most awkward people I've met in my entire life.
Hot shoe's
It
dope.
just
Hot shoe,
like
you're the man.
I love him. I do. He's great.
Yeah, he's
But
the best, dude.
he'll
He's
come
king.
out of the fucking ether with just the weirdest shit. And like we won't be talking about anything remotely related to what he chooses to bring up. And we
Just
just
goes
like
on
we
from
Yeah.
know
there.
that's what it's gonna be.
Just
We
goes
love
from
him for
there.
it because it becomes
Just goes on from there.
he's a character. He's become part of the culture of the club. Is we end up with those inside jokes, and you end up with uh, what to expect from certain people and certain personalities, and that's one of those things that um, makes it almost makes it harder to gain members, because you have people trying to come in and they
Hmm.
want to be part of that, but they haven't been there. They haven't helped shape it. So as they come in, it's like trying to explain inside jokes that we've had for years
Right.
to this new guy that's here, and it's like, well, that's why. And then some of those things, like, they're hilarious to us and they make a lot of sense, and the more you explain them, the weirder they seem,
Right.
or
You had to be
just
there.
like you had to be there. It was funny though, and then you explain what happened, and like, that sounds really stupid. Why the fuck do we do that?
Mm.
Because we do. All right. Now you're part
Right,
of it too.
right. It's definitely it's definitely a thing. Like,
But that's
there's
part of culture. That's definitely
Yeah,
part of culture. The
get with
inside
it or get the
jokes.
fuck out.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Get
And
ready to get
when
on.
you
Right.
when you are going through, looking for prospects or looking for new members, you're looking for, like, once you have that longevity, you're looking for someone that will meld with the group. You're
oh,
not looking for
personality
like
definitely accounts for
it
way more
matters. It
Yeah.
than
matters.
But
skill
like when
set.
you come here, like a new person showing up here is gonna like you're gonna see like what you need to look like, what you need to be doing. And
Hmm.
if you haven't like got that shit, it's like the most people are gonna tell you if you're like trying to like get to this club, it's like if you got some weird ass face paint, it's like get rid of that shit.
Yeah.
Like that's all we're gonna tell you. But if anything else, if you gotta like, you're gonna see it. You're gonna know how you need to represent the club.
Well,
And
We
it,
kind of
if
have
you
a
look
certain vibe.
around, that's what I mean. And if you look around
yeah.
and you see something and you say, you know what, I want to be totally different than this, then why would you want to be a part of
All
it?
right, why would you want to be a part of this?
Yeah.
Facts.
Like I don't get it. Like why do you want to? Why must you need to be like? I want to be completely different from what everybody's doing, but I'm gonna be still. This is what I'm representing, but
Well, look at the
completely different from
stereotypical
everybody.
tryhard
I don't get it.
on GTA. You can scroll through a player list and look at somebody's character, and you can see what kind of person they're like. You can
Hmm.
just assume what kind of player they're gonna be, because they
Right.
like you have all these super like trolly tryhard shit talking guys, and they all look exactly the same. They all have some sort of like Halloween face paint on. They have weirdly colored dreadlock
Red
haircut. They
eyes or
have
some shit.
they either
Yeah.
have their ankles have been amputated, or they've got their joggers fucking tucked into their socks, and like the glitched out suit vests, and like red eye contacts or black eye contacts, and
Edgy.
a variety of other like outfit stuff. But like everybody who plays this game on a regular basis, especially in the MC community, we can look at those people like, that guy's an asshole, and
Yeah. I'm gonna have to shoot him.
yeah, or he's gonna come harass me for no reason whatsoever because he can. Like, oh yeah, he's on a depressor now. That's not surprising at all. All right, but it's one of those things. Bef- he'll shoot you once, send you a text message that says L's, and then leave the lobby.
Yeah.
Um, but that's one of those things, and like Beefly touched on, our club doesn't look like that. Neither one of our clubs looks like that. And if that's your play style, if that's sort of the image that you put forth, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I suppose that's subjective, but there's you can do whatever you want. It's your game. You can play it however you want.
Right.
But if you see a group that is not that, you're like, oh, I should go join it. Why don't they accept me for who I am? Like, because who you are doesn't fit with the fucking group. Like,
Because it's what club is.
like that's like we'll never force anybody to play or dress a certain way, but we're also not going to force you to become a member of this club. If you don't want to go by our rules, if you don't want to kind of if, feel out our vibe, then you're not
Yeah.
going to be here. And that's fine. Go find some other club. Go do something else. Like you like
Yeah.
no nobody's forcing anybody to join Exile.
Well,
Nobody's forcing anybody to join Red Menace. You have to fit where you want to
that's what
be.
a
Yeah.
club is. Like it's literally just a group of people who have like-minded
Like-minded.
ideals and style and live, you know, for a certain way. That's what a club is. So it's like when people come to you
There's
and
a
you're
sense
just
of
like, I want
entitlement
to
to
join
it.
your club, and you look
If,
at them and it's like, but why?
Well,
if the
there's a
saying
sense of
goes,
entitlement. It's like
if
I
They
you
can't
should
tell
give
you.
me a patch. Like, okay, but why?
yep,
They
if you
can't
don't
tell you.
belong, don't belong. Get the fuck out of here.
Get the
Yeah,
fuck out.
I got
It doesn't
I
make
have that on
sense.
a fucking steel side in my
Yeah, it's a
garage.
great saying, man, because
It
it's the
is.
truth.
But it is one of those things, and that goes to building a fucking culture of a club. You can't just throw shit at a wall and see what sticks. And if you
Sometimes you
take
can, because
well you
sometimes the, like
Unless
like
that's the
the dumb
theme of the
stuff that we
club.
fucking talked about, yeah, I retract that statement. We definitely have some stuff that like if you tried to build it from scratch and you took all the stuff that we have and you looked at it, it's like, why do you do this? Uh,
No, there's a
because
whole story to
we did it
it.
and it
You
worked.
sit, buckle
we
up.
did it and it
We kept
worked.
doing it.
Have a
Um,
seat. We'll be here all night.
but it also has to be one of those things that's built over time. I don't think that you can have an idea for what a club what'll you'll be if you want to start one, but you can't come out of the gate and have all of this shit that
Ready.
like
Yeah,
you can't ready make it. Like there's obviously you have to have a foundation of some sort, but you
I think
can't.
a
Right.
good example gunslinger is like the rattlesnake helmets. Like the rattlesnake helmets. It's like
Yeah,
those came out way later in the game. And at first when they came out, we saw them and we're like, okay, that's pretty cool. But we didn't wear them. And then it took like B-Fly saying like, hey, this should be like the actual club. Like, everybody should at least have one of these. But then like we all started actually wearing it, and it became like you don't see anybody else at
Staple.
Exile wearing that helmet.
It's
Yeah,
a staple.
Right. You don't see nobody wearing the helmet but Exo. And
I've
like
seen a couple clubs that have not
We got
necessarily
that. We
done the help, like not done the
the helmet
rattlesnake
thing,
helmet.
most definitely, yeah. But
It
not,
definitely turned
yeah.
into a couple
yeah.
things, and I noticed a few
I
clubs
think we
that
got that
started
from
doing
y'all.
that after.
We,
Yeah, well,
Well,
that was the thing. I noticed it after we decided to do that because even before the
It
biker update
became a
came out, you
thing,
had
dude. It did.
even before the biker update came out, you had clubs that they all had like their matching uniforms and everything, which I still think is one of the
Right.
stupidest things that I see. Is you get these guys that they all have the same shirt and jacket and jeans and boots and like they get their own haircut and maybe a hat, but everything else is completely identical. And
yeah.
there are all these cookie cutter fucking members of your club. They all have matching bikes. They all have matching outfits, and they're in their little uniform. And it's like cool, you're like, I get you're trying to show unity of some kind, but like to me clubs are parts of a whole. Like it the people that make it up are what's important. So like if you're all just if you have this fucking cookie cutter member, yeah, I recognize that you're a member of a club, but who the fuck are you and why should I care?
hmm
Right.
And we kind of use that as sort of a unity thing with the helmets. And I noticed that like we would show up to events, and everybody's got different bikes, everybody's got different different
Nobody's
outfits,
wearing a
different
helmet.
but we would show up as a club, and we'd all have like that would be the one thing that would all tie it all together. And I noticed that after the fact is I noticed a few clubs where they kind of had that one thing, whether it was a helmet, whether it was
A cut.
a cut, a
Yeah.
shirt, something that tied them all together. But it wasn't just like all the same, uniform. It was just
Right.
one piece that showed that bit of solidarity, and that to me is really cool. Uh, but I still I still see these cookie cutter people, and I think it's ridiculous.
yeah, I don't get
I
it.
think it's I think it was way easier to build a club's imagery back when social media wasn't so prominent, like so like
Such a part
Definitely,
of
just
it.
so like
everybody's
just
trying to
so like
do what everybody
mainstream
else
now.
is doing. Like
That's
there's
Yeah,
always
exactly
this
what I'm saying.
constant
When that
comparison.
wasn't there, you weren't able to see like what everybody was doing, so you were just able to focus on your club and build off of what
Yeah.
you were doing. But
You
now
couldn't
it's so
follow
easy
people,
for
and you couldn't
somebody, yeah.
get tagged and
and
But
shit.
now it's so easy to like copy somebody because you
and
see
we were
it, and
late
now
to the
that's
game
like
with all that shit too.
right. We were super late, but we still managed to like come up with our own shit. And it's like yeah, it's like the
I
desert
think
and
that was
shit.
a
Like a lot of
benefit
clubs
to
do
us, though,
that.
is what I'm saying. Like, I think
Right.
that helped, like, because exactly what you're saying. Like, we just focused on ourselves. Like, we didn't give a fuck what everybody else was
We
putting
couldn't
out
yeah,
there.
we couldn't even see what anybody else was doing. We didn't give a fuck what anybody else was doing. Like it was
A
just
lot of
us.
like we didn't even recognize that like Instagram was like had the community that it did, and
Yeah.
this was still a couple of years ago. It's definitely flourished into something way more than what it once was. But I remember the first post on the Exiled Club page
You probably told us we couldn't make that.
immediately got like bombarded by these weirdos talking
Oh,
shit
dude, yeah.
about who
I remember.
about how we were some new pop-up club. And at that point the
All right.
club was I think 3 years old.
3 years in,
The
bro.
club
We
Check
were
the
we
three
like
social
years
club
in.
retard.
Yeah.
we'd been a club for 3 years at that point, and just finally
And
decided to get
some guy
an
says that
Instagram
we're some new
profile.
club.
And you got these
These
guys
guys,
talking shit about how we're some
you
new
know,
pop-up club, and
they've been around for 8 months or
we've
something.
been around. They've been around for like 6 months, and how we were copying
But
them
they
or
were on
something like,
Instagram
and
first.
they all fucking disappeared. Like if you go back to that
Uh,
post, like you can see the conversation where they tagged people and all the names have changed. A couple of, like I looked into this the other day when I was thinking about this. Like a couple of them like they don't do gaming content anymore. If they do, it's not GTA
Right.
related. Like there's no reference to the clubs that they were talking shit about. And I know it's been a couple of years and that this community has a high turnover rate for shit, but even still, like the whole premise of their argument was that we were unoriginal, or that we had, or that they had done this, or like that's awesome.
we're just like half the
You're
time,
not.
bro. We're just like, what?
Who the
Like
fuck are
that's like
you, and
us.
why
That's
should I
like
Who
us
are
care?
most
you?
of the time with these people. We're just like, what are you talking about? It's like you even know?
Uh,
Like you don't.
no, a lot of them are kind of delusional, dude. And
Delusional.
They're
they just
crazy.
don't.
They're
It's like they
insane.
refuse
Don't
to
want to
see
accept.
reality the way that it
Yeah.
is.
No, I'm not a. I didn't copy you. What?
It's like you did.
What?
Blue Menace? You Blue Menace of South Los Santos? What?
You
How?
changed one word.
Who
You
was that?
change.
There was a club at one point that like did they literally screenshot your
Yeah.
patch and send it to a
Here's the
patch
patch
Yes.
we
maker
want to rip
and
off for
like
you
and
guys to
like
make ours.
circle stuff
Make
like I
this.
wanted this
Yes.
but change this thing. Like I
I've
want
never
this
heard of you
patch but
guys. How did you
change
just
this
say that
part
to me?
and change this part. But this is the thing we want. I was like,
Hey, make this.
And
no, we
and
didn't
then the
we didn't
excuse.
we didn't steal anything from you.
Hey,
Dude,
And
make
I
the
this.
have the
excuse.
Make this,
screenshot
but with
of
these
the
words.
fucking
Put
conversation
these
of you
words
saying
on it.
I want their patch but this.
And
That's
then
right.
the excuse is,
That's right.
well, there's lots. Everybody's influenced by clubs. There's lots of
Yeah.
clubs like Hell's
You
Angels.
should be
There's lots of.
flattered.
We're not
Yeah.
Hell's Angels. We're unique, a
There was
standalone
there's
operation.
definitely
Right.
something
Angels of
unique
Hell.
that you did. I mean, obviously you're based on a real club, and we touched on that. Like the Chosen
Right.
Few is a real club. There are single piece patch MCs out there. There's a lot of famous ones. There's the Galloping Goose. There's El Forastero. I mean, if you look at the
Hmm.
Vagos, they're a two piece patch. Um, there's a lot of clubs out there that kind of do their own thing, but
Pagans.
within the realm of GTA, I can think of very few that rock a one piece oval patch
Right.
uh, and in a certain manner. And you built that culture, and yeah, it's a game. You're gonna find inspiration in all sorts of places, and that kind of goes back to the thing where a lot of people base a lot of their shit on on Sons of Anarchy because that's
Their
their
first
metric to go.
influence.
But that's what they know about club culture because nobody bothers to research it. Nobody bothers to look more into it. The history of it. I mean, you have clubs like that go back 70, 80 years at this point. Like the Booze Fighters
Hmm.
started in
OG,
1946.
OG.
Like if you go like and some people debate on what's the oldest club. You look at like the Outlaws. They trace theirs back to the 30s.
Yeah,
Uh,
35.
depending on which claim that they want to go with and some changes that have been made along the way. Uh, there's so much history and there's so many different things you can do that you can if you want to build a fake MC, which is what all of these are. If you want to build a motorcycle club and you want to take bits and pieces from real club culture and build something entirely unique, that's really easy to do because there's so much source material that you can go off of. There's been so many clubs and so much history and so much different imagery and vibes and cultures, and everybody picks the same thing.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh well, you copied that off of us. Like you copied it off of somebody else. Build something of your own. Like yeah, maybe they took something from you. Maybe it was one of those things. It's like, and that kind of goes back to the territory claims. It's like, oh well, we were the first ones to have this rocker. So, yeah,
Like, bro, we've been here
but
3 years
everybody
and I've
does.
seen 5 other people claim that
Like
same
like
place
see
before
like
you.
it's like
Yeah.
like it's the popular shit. It's everybody has Polito Bay. Everybody has Los Santos. Everybody has a San Andreas rocker.
Places
And
that are worth fighting over in the eyes of the community.
yeah,
Right.
but like and like how do
Like,
you like that's the thing. Like everybody has one. Is like you should respect our territory claim. Why? Why
for
should I
what?
respect your territory claim
Yeah.
that 5 dozen other fucking clubs that I'm going to see this weekend are going to have the same one? Why
Well,
should I respect that more?
Why is
we'll
yours more
give you
important?
1 week to use the casino, and then you gotta check in with
And then it's open
it.
season.
Yeah.
No,
Better check
said
in.
nobody said that. No, what kind of
That
idiot
didn't
would make some
happen.
sort of
No
claim like
one,
that?
no one of
That didn't
significance.
happen.
Anyway.
Oh my goodness. Oh
Jesus
my
You
Christ.
see,
That
What
the
a
really
thing about that
douche.
is,
wait,
I'm
it was
not sure
serious.
if that was like a troll thing,
That
or
wasn't no
if
It
troll.
was dead
Dead
ass.
ass serious.
or if
Yeah,
that was
Dead
like
that
ass.
shit
legit.
was
Dead
real
ass.
Was
chest
that
pumping.
actually
Like,
like a
thought they were
serious
cool
They
as
thing?
fuck
Dead
or
Like,
ass.
something.
they
like
gave
They was
somebody a new
serious as
position
fuck.
just for check-ins. Like, did so
What
and
a
so check in?
weirdo.
They ain't checking
It's a
in.
it's a new
What a
secretary job,
check,
bro.
weirdo.
what
They
check
ain't
in? Were
No,
checking
you
in.
I
like,
didn't
are you
talk
the
to him, boss.
hotel? Like, are you the
I
clerk
didn't
at the
talk to
fucking
him,
desk?
boss.
Hey, yeah, I'm here to check in. Yeah, yeah, for a week. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, for real. Like,
Jesus.
and that's the thing. Like, there's some turfs that you can't. Like, you pick too much territory. Why did you? What are you gonna do? Like I can. We made perimeters. For Southlos, and that's why Southlos is Southlos because there are clubs that claim South Central, and different like South Los Santos,
Hmm.
but their map might not be the same as ours. Their map definitely isn't the same as ours if they only claim South Central. If they claim South Los Santos, they're probably just claiming Davis. Like we
Maybe
made a map
Strawberry.
and said these are our walls. And when we're in lobbies, we're patrolling the walls. We're going around everywhere that we claim in our territory, making sure people don't press us.
Mhm.
And that's what I think that's what made our South Los claim different than anybody that came after us or anybody that was claiming before us, which is I don't know of anybody, but it was something tangible that we could see when we look at the map. We see it a specific way.
The
We don't
imagery of
see
the
it.
club helps too, though. If you
Yeah,
can recognize a club in a certain area, if you go to an area, you're gonna recognize that a club belongs here if you know about the club, and it's like what like that club's done a good job of, you know, painting imagery of that territory.
right.
You're gonna it's gonna be recognition both ways.
And
That's
that
hard to
was
do though,
it
and
is.
It is. It is.
it's not even that it's hard to do. It's that there's so much noise. There's
Right.
so much there's so many clubs that pop up and die and pop up and die, and everybody's claiming this other thing, and they do, and people hop around from club to club, and you get these guys that they show up and they see something and they latch onto that, and even if you work on building it, somebody will say, oh well, so and so else did this. Like, oh, I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And
I don't
that's
know who the
not meant
guy
to
is.
be a thing of that's not even really meant to be disrespectful. Some people take it that way, but
Right.
the sheer volume of people and the different platforms, and I think Instagram's definitely made that worse. Is you'll have people saying, well, this club on Xbox did this thing, and you guys are on PlayStation, or these guys on the PC are doing the like. I don't interact with them. I don't see them. Like, they
Yeah.
might as well be on a different fucking
Right.
planet. Like, yeah, I can like their pictures and
hmm
I can see the stuff that they're doing.
We have a couple
But
counterparts on Xbox.
like that's one of those things, like, well, there's this other club with the same name as you guys. I'm like, okay, so we had the same idea. Like even if
hmm
I don't purposely take that from somebody. One of the cool things that kind of need to see, there's a club on PC called Brothers in Exile MC,
Hmm.
and um, we
Also
are
from
completely
France and all
independent
that.
from each other,
Yeah.
and you know we're on different platforms. We had no prior content, but even the name is somewhat similar, which was something that was what actually brought them to our attention. But I started looking into this club, and they kind of claim the same territories, and they have a very similar vibe, and they seem to have very
hmm
similar values. But the two of us did that completely independently of each other,
Right.
It's weird,
and
bro. It's crazy too.
it's really interesting that, like, there are so many similarities without having any actual, like, influence on,
Contact.
like, any
Right.
direct influence on each other at all.
Right.
And it's really kind of cool, but it makes you think that maybe what I'm doing, I'm not the first person to do it, or maybe
Of
this isn't,
course.
my idea might not be as original as I think it is, or
Right.
Right.
it could be in our instance where the influence for it was just taken from the same place, and like-minded people built it the same way.
Hmm.
And that's no disrespect to, like, I don't take it as a disrespect to us because they did it that way, and I hope they don't perceive
Right.
it that way for us doing it. But there's not, you know there's the point comes from the same origin. Like, it's the same thing that built it. It's the same mindset. And all it tells me is that people aren't really that different. But everyone wants to think that their idea is the
Hmm.
first one. I was the first one to do it. This is mine,
Yeah.
and all you other guys are just stealing my shit. And it's like, you're not that important, and you're not that
We're we're
special.
definitely we're definitely not the first Red Menace. We're the first Red Menace MC. But Red
Fair.
Menace is a term that comes from, the Cold War era. That's what they call
Yeah.
Russia. And
Russia.
that's I thought that shit was tight because one, red's my favorite color. And two, like the whole reason I came up with that name was because I I was super influenced by Menace to Society, just the name itself. Like I wanted my character to be from a place, like the people in Menace to Society in the hood. And so I was like juggling names, Menace this, Menace that, and nothing was fitting. I was like, at first I was gonna call it Menace to Society, MC, and I was like, that's terrible. So I I just kept juggling names around. I was like, well, what color will we rep? I'm like, red, of course, Red Menace. I looked it up and I was like, damn, there's hella Red Menace on Social Club. And I was like, okay, well, Red Menace MC. It was open, so I took it. Like there it is, you know.
Yeah.
And that's literally how I came up with that name, and all the lore that comes behind it is just based off of different interactions we've had with other
Right.
club members, um, and their ideas of what it meant to be Red Menace. So, it's you have to have time for all of that stuff to build up. It's like imperative, and people don't give they don't give
No.
themselves enough time to be a real club most of the time.
Yeah, you gotta let shit grow, and you gotta let it grow by itself. You can't
By itself,
force it.
right?
So
Can't fake, can't fake like a club growth. You can't fake like I don't know, like
You
you
can
said, it's like the interactions between members paints like the whole pays the whole way of the club
hmm
and like what y'all believe in, what y'all like the inside jokes become like
The culture.
the
you
lore of your
can
club.
you can
Yeah.
Yeah.
definitely force growth, and I think
Yeah,
that's
but
one of
like it
those
doesn't
things that
last long.
a
Like
lot of
that's
people
Mhm.
fail with is that, like, I see these guys, they're constantly recruiting, and it's kind of like a job that's always hiring. There's a reason,
yeah, it's a
because,
company. They got the
like,
company vibe.
well, it's not even that. It's people won't stay. Like any job that's always hiring, odds are there's a reason nobody wants to keep working there. It's not because the
hmm
company keeps getting bigger that fast. It's because they can't get people to stay. And I think the clubs that are always recruiting are the same way. They have a lot of turnover rate. Either they have a lot of turnover or people just aren't joining. Period.
Yeah.
And so if you're in any sort of community pages, or like there's social club crews for it, there's PlayStation Network communities, there's Instagram pages, even like if you follow specific clubs, they'll always be posting, recruitment, come join us, be part of something. And they're all the same, every single one of them. Like they all have these tropes of stuff that they all do. It's all uh, you know, brotherhood, loyalty, 1%. Like they all have like this fucking checklist that they go down, and we're gonna put this and this and this, and they're all the same. So why would anybody pick this club, club A over club B, when the only thing that's different is the name and what their centerpiece is? Some of them will have the same fucking colors and rockers and all this other shit. Literally the only thing that's different is fucking name and the centerpiece.
Right.
And if you're, I try to think about that as someone from the outside looking in, just coming into this community. If they're all spouting the same shit, why would I pick this one? Why would I pick that one? What makes it unique? And to me, it has to be that culture. That's why your club makes a culture. Is it? You can't just be the same as everybody else. We're all doing
It,
kind of the same thing though. That's the
it
funny
is.
part about it. We're all trying to do this motorcycle club thing. We're all trying to be, we're role playing as bikers online. The premise behind them is mostly the same, but we constantly bicker and argue and fight each other about more or less nothing,
Yeah.
and to do all of the same shit. So I don't understand why the MC community is so built on fucking conflict. We all fight each other. Like we should, be going against, like street gangs. We should be going against,
hmm
mafia families. We should be going against, you know police role playing crews. We shouldn't
Definitely.
be constantly fighting other MCs. It doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I don't got an answer for that one. I don't got an answer for that one. I think the MC
There's
community
not enough
definitely,
organized. There's not enough organized
Yeah,
organizations like
I
that
think
though.
that's
not
the
enough clubs
problem.
that are
Well,
solid.
no, it's not that there's not enough
Not the
clubs
clubs.
that
I'm
are, no.
saying like
There's just
street gangs, like
there's not
street
street
gangs.
crews that are organized. Like
Yeah,
the
there's no
MC
street
community
crews
is
that are
very good
organized.
at being, kind of rank and file, having
Yeah,
a
Hmm.
level of organization.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is how we work.
Right.
This is what we represent. This is how we operate. And I don't see that in other communities. I don't see that
Right.
from the mafia families. I don't see that from the street crews. I don't see that from pretty much anybody, even the military ones. Like they fall apart because they just descend into anarchy and they do whatever the
And
fuck
yeah,
they
how are you
want.
gonna
Well,
beef with a
but think
club that's
about
or a gang that's beefing with itself? Like,
right. Well, think about the fact that MCs are 1%. Any of the ones that we respect or have any um yeah, any amount of respect for are 1%. So if we're going to fight another community entirely, like we can't
I
you can't
I
guarantee
won't
they're going to fight this way where,
I won't. I'll argue against that point because there's
yeah,
a couple clubs that we associate with that aren't strictly 1%, and they're still very well organized, well established clubs that kind of do their own thing. But being 1% isn't, at least in the realm of GTA, isn't a requirement to be a successful club.
that's true.
It's not something that you have to do. It's one of those things. I feel like a lot of people throw a diamond on their patch when they make it because they just think it's something they're supposed to do. They don't necessarily adhere to it, um,
Yeah.
and that's a whole other episode. And the whole 1% arguments is
Yeah,
is
definitely.
a can of worms that I eventually want to tackle, but I don't really want to open that right now. Because that's going to be one of those things that's going to blossom into a massive discussion and debate that I do not have the
You're gonna have a
patience
lot
for
of
right now.
people
It's
mad at you.
it's too diff. Like everybody's got way too different of an opinion on that. Like you can't even begin to have a real discussion about it. Like
Well,
Yeah,
I
there's like
kind of
certain
treat it
just
people
like
you
who
religion.
explain your version, you explain your version, you explain your version. All right, deal. Let's get out of here.
I kind of treat it
Like
like,
because
well, that's
there's
the thing
no
is nobody
agreement.
will agree on anything, and that
Yeah.
that that goes with clubs in general. Everybody thinks that their way is the right way, and again, it goes back to us all doing essentially the same thing. Everybody's running an MC, but everybody thinks that they can do it the best way or they can do it the right way, and that's why there's so many clubs. That's why there's so many different MCs. It's why a lot of people, if they're in a successful club and for whatever reason it falls apart or it ceases to be, they don't go join another club. They go
Mhm.
start another club.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
every time.
And the
Like
reason because is they have this idea that they can do it the right way. Whatever was wrong with the last one that they were in, I'm gonna do it right this time. Like my idea is
well,
best.
I mean that's what we did.
That's
Like that's
true.
literally what we
That's
did.
And
literally
I and
what
I
we did
understand
though.
that. And we,
And so
But
I'm
it's
not
only
saying
sometimes
certain
everybody that
situations
does
where it's
that
yeah.
better.
can't make that work. I'm not saying
But we
everybody
did
that
it.
does.
We did it with a group of people. So it was
It
already
wasn't
like
just one person.
no.
Yeah, you need
Yeah,
that base. I think that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like I see a
You
lot of
need a
guys
core.
like they'll be
it helped a
recruiting
lot.
and it'll be one guy, and he's got a picture of him sitting in his patch at the table in his fucking clubhouse.
Yeah,
Yeah. We
Come be
started a
part of a brotherhood. Like,
we
brother,
started
what you that person right
You
there?
the brother?
exactly one
You the brother?
person. We started
Yeah,
with 13. Like okay, like day 1. Like that's how many
like
people we
day
had in the
one we
club.
came in with 13.
So it was a ready-made club, ready-made chapter and it just
People
grew from
ready to
there.
rock.
Yep,
Yeah, you
we
can't do it
were
with
ready
one
for
person
that
and be like,
shit.
"Oh yeah, I'm starting this and this is all it is." And
And
wow, this is
everybody
just
in
you.
the, and everybody that came in was ready to be exiled. They weren't like
before you
having no
ever
second
come up with a
thoughts.
name, before
It
you
was
ever
like,
come up with a patch, before you ever try to start attempting to build a culture, you need
Right.
to have a membership base. The people are the important part.
right.
For all the Sons of Anarchy
Mm-mm.
clubs and fans, they all know about their first nine.
Yeah.
Like that you have to have that.
Yeah,
Um,
I talked about that. We were going to do an episode
gotta
on
have a
the
core.
influences of
you
Sons
know,
of Anarchy on this cult on
I'm
this like
telling
on this
you,
club
you're
culture.
going to have that talk in every episode you do.
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
it's
Because
we're
there's
unavoidable.
actually, guys, we're coming close to time, so I'm gonna kind of wind this down. We can keep talking out after I turn this off. I have no problem doing that,
I
but
have ignored my girlfriend's calls for the last hour. I have to go as soon as this ends, but
oh man, fucking Red's gonna be in the doghouse. Anyway,
yeah, I won't
uh,
be able to explain where I've been. I'm gonna tell her I was asleep.
uh,
Mm.
but
that's probably a good idea.
SB B Fly Rattler, I thank you. I thank all three of you for coming and bothering to sit down and waste time and have a conversation with me. Uh,
Absolutely.
we'll definitely
Thank
have
you.
to keep it up. I'm looking forward to doing more episodes of this. This is the second one. I've had a blast with it. I can't wait to keep building this into something else. But for all of you listening out there in the future, this has been Beyond Full Throttle.